So I know some guys that have done a lot of deliverance ministry. They have helped a lot of people that have been involved and very deeply harmed through satanic ritual abuse. A lot of work with law enforcement on different cases. You name it, a lot of these cases where a satanic element to it. They're almost always in a satanic cult, but law enforcement and the news doesn't announce that because it doesn't really play well into the case evidence of motive in a court of law. They like to deal with what's tangible and provable. So, hey, worship some entity that we can't see and touch, and so he did this. Well, they can't, that's not as factually demonstrable as, well, here's what the perpetrator had and here's what the perpetrator did to the person. They process the cases that way. They can see the bone shrines and the pentagrams and the candles and all of it, but you don't hear about it, even though that's part of what a lot of these sick cases. So, but there's a skit, I'll call it a skit, but it's a very dark and horrific ceremony. This is done all over the world, and we know of hundreds of cases, hundreds of reports of this same skit, only slight variations going on in satanic groups all over the place. And here's essentially what it is, and I'm going to clean it up by 99%. Otherwise, you'd be thrown up on your shoes before I finish this video, and that's not why I'm here. But imagine these people in positions of trust by a child, and a child is in their possession. They take this child, and I'll just say that they are violating this child and harming this child in the worst possible ways. I'll leave it at that. In the one case, I'm going to take one case so I don't mix them. She was an 8-year-old girl, and they were electrocuting her, and they were harming her greatly, and they told her, call out for Jesus Christ to come save you. Call for Jesus to come save you. Now, they didn't say Hare Krishna or Buddha or Allah or anything else. It's Jesus Christ. Now, why were they worried about Jesus Christ? It's noteworthy. So one of them, who is completely dressed up like Jesus Christ, and they spend a lot of money with a lot of theatrics, a lot of costume and makeup to create these scenarios that they mean to be very, very real for these children who they're harming. This man, this monster, this demon-possessed scumbag dresses up like Jesus Christ. He comes into the room with this girl crying out for Jesus to save him because she's made to do it. And instead of saving her, he defiles her and he harms her as greatly, if not greater than the others, worse than the others. And then he betrays her and abandons her. And then she's moved through a veil into another space. And there sits another man, and he's dressed up like Satan. And he has what they describe as a picnic type of arrangement in front of him. And he has a conversation with this traumatized little girl that has language like, I'm sorry that wimpy little Jesus harmed you and did that to you. He has no power here. We threw him out. I, Satan, am all powerful here. You can have whatever you want with me. I have your back. So folks, with that radically cleaned up version of that horrific scenario that's perpetrated against children at a rate we may never learn, but is extensive. What is the intention of that satanic ceremony? It is to drive these children, these young souls, away from Jesus Christ, right? Down and away from Jesus Christ, down into this fear state, this broken, shattered, just angry, bitter state of low vibration, if you will, just horrified and untrusting, and just definitely not a soaring, happy, trusting, faithful soul, but horribly traumatized and just driven down to the worst type of just shattered little mind that Satan controls. They mean for that child to be a servant of Satan for the rest of their lives. And there's a lot of the technique utilized that any of you have read about the CIA's program, the MK Ultra mind control program. That's been going on throughout human history, folks, but the Germans learned a whole lot more in the 30s. The Germans kind of elevated the knowledge of that, and so that's why at the end of World War II, the Russians and the Americans, when we were moving in through Germany, it became kind of like a scavenger hunt, a race, if you will, to see who could grab up the most scientists, mainly the rocket scientists, Werner von Braun and those, which we brought over, and they were founders of NASA to head up our space program. And then the psychologists that the CIA brought in for the mind control and that kind of prisoner manipulation and that kind of programming technique. Very dark stuff, though, on the mind control programming. But these satanic cult groups utilize this. They utilize it extensively. After speaking with so many survivors, it's apparent that the control and the effect of these techniques is a lot more effective than I had estimated or understood it to be. I've read a few books over the years about different CIA programs and MK Ultra and some of the others, and I knew that it was to traumatize the young mind to the point to where the mind splits. So the victim can't get away physically, so they're under such horror, the unthinkable horror and terror, that they finally, out of self-defense, the mind fractures and splits. It breaks into schizophrenia, an alternate personality that can escape and go somewhere else because the physical body is stuck there, okay? After the mind splits once, they can split it many, many times. It's easier to split into further parts, they call them. And each part is programmed to do certain tasks, which then are called on literally for the rest of that person's life unless that programming begins breaking down over time. Now, when people get a lot of therapy and healing, that program starts to break down more quickly and they start remembering more and healing at a faster rate. And in cases where Jesus Christ is involved, there's a miraculous healing. It accelerates radically, and there are miracles that happen. But there's a lot of this. So imagine when the U.S. government says 85,000 children were lost last year and still has no theory as to where they went when it was on their watch. Unaccompanied minors, 85,000 children that are the responsibility of our federal government. The federal government is just saying, oops, they're gone. Next story. That's 2 football stadiums full of children that the federal government was claiming to be bringing to their biological parents. Where are those meetings? Where are those reunions? And where's the accountability for that not happening? 85,000 children, souls, precious little scared children. Folks, what are we allowing in our beloved USA? What level of harm, what level of industrial destruction of the children are we allowing by saying, oh, I just can't? There's a price to pay for that. What I believe is happening right now, spiritually, those of you that have been reading Revelation or watching the news or both, all the corruption's starting to come out. It seems like it's predestined, like the lid's coming off. You watch these congressional hearing videos and you will see heads of agencies and directors of programs completely exposed in their corruption and utter incompetency. They don't know their jobs. They're not doing their jobs. They're doing the opposite of their jobs. They belong in federal prison, yet nothing's happening to them. It's like, okay, he was brutally exposed and verbally beat down, and all of the evidence was just brought out against him. He had no answers for it, and then sun comes up and goes down. We go into a next day and nothing's happening. So our DOJ is not doing anything. There's no system of correction. The checks and balance is corrupted. It's gone. So we're in this downward spiral. So no wonder you have government chartered buses and planes flying children deep into the United States from the border towns and no accountability. When they asked Jen Psaki about it in the White House briefing room, she said, oh, now consider this, folks. Some of these aircraft flights, they're flying children in at 3 and 4 in the morning in airfields where it's illegal to land past midnight. That's not legal. From companies, aircraft that are owned and chartered and operated by companies that contract to our intelligence community, intelligence agencies, federal agencies, with tail numbers on them that register to companies that have been out of business for years, and with FAA manifests that say cargo. When 20 or 30 children are brought off and shoved into POVs or buses and raced off of the airfield and country towns in the middle of the night, like an illegal narcotics drop. And when reporters started asking Jen Psaki about it in the White House briefing room, she said, oh, earlier flights than you or I might like to take, but that doesn't mean anything's going on. She knows because she already had her pre-canned answer standing by. They all know it. They know what's happening to the children. Jen Psaki can't be under the impression that these children are being bused to their biological parents in the light of day or even in the night. There's no way that she could believe that. She's got to be briefed on the lies to tell us too much, or any other press secretaries. How could anyone even take that job in this era and serve as quislings, traitors to everyone they ever loved? They're lying they're for a job, and to be on TV, they're willing to lie to everyone they ever loved, to deceive us so that we'll pull that lever for that which is harmful to us, again, rather than for the solution. To deceive us so that we can't act or vote and our own best interest, and so that the harm to children can continue at industrial scale.